And we're back live, everybody, here at Advertising Week. We're excited to be here with David Shing, also known as Shingy.
That's right.
The digital prophet from AOL. We're super excited to have you here in the tank today.
Thanks for having me, brother.
We're talking a little bit about the future of digital experiences. So
okay.
I want to get your perspective on this work you're doing with AOL.
Yep.
How are you looking at the future? What do you do? What matters with digital?
All right, there's about 5 questions in one there, so let's attack those. Firstly, I love the fact you use the word experience. In the last 6 months, what I've been saying is there's always a new word of the year. Last year for me was disruption. Every brand wanted to disrupt, and I will come back and say, how? Then they'd say, well, let's talk about using technology. I'm like, well, okay, that's part of it, but what about your business model? So this year it's experience, man. That's the most used word, because the reality is this. It's no longer about screens. Whatever screen you face at the time is the primary need. And so people are like, well, television's dead, right? Well, yeah, years ago I was saying that TV was not the first screen, your phone was. But that's not true anymore. It's whatever screen you're facing at the right time. So for example, I do believe that a 40-inch screen that somebody faces in the living room matters, not because they're watching television, because high definition video and the experience of immersive content can happen better there than it can on a portrait example experience like this on that screen. So there's a different type of screen for a different type of need and purpose. Now that ultimately means experience. What we're trying to do at AOL is build brands that people love. So our job's pretty simple, dude. We're trying to get people to the brands that we build, and then we're trying to get brands through advertising to the brands people to the brands that they love. That's it. We make it really complicated when we start throwing stuff at it, because it's complicated because of people. When people start to interact with all of these different types of ways that you can experience a brand, it's the consumers that vote, you know, and so I look to trying to distill those down. But the definition of experience is a really interesting thing for me, which is how do we have this immersive, languid, long, beautiful, multifaceted time with a brand, and what's the purpose of it? They're the things that I think about when I define experience. And it's less about the shiny objects, it's more about what's the objective.
So how do you deal with that though? So you think of yourself as this digital prophet. There is a whole lot of shiny objects.
Yeah.
And so what happens when the CEO or C-level comes to you and says, well, we've got to do that because that's what everybody's doing? How do you distill that and say, no, we don't?
Well, the first question you got to ask is why. So too often people talk about the how and the what. They don't talk about the why. And here's the problem, brother. I tell you why they don't ask that question, because it's hard work. What you have to do is dig into the DNA of a brand and say, really? You want to be on all of these platforms all the time? Here's what doesn't work. And this is just a period generalization, in my humble opinion, is that people say, look, Shingy, we've heard you, dude, we get the digital thing, we're good. I'm like, awesome. Well, how much of your marketing budget still goes to television? Well, about 80% of it. Awesome. But when you run an ad, what do you do with that digitally? Well, we take that and we run it as a pre-roll for 30 seconds across the internet, and you expect it to perform equally as well as it does or does not on television. That's the wrong approach. And part of the problem is today, the issue with all of these shiny objects is production. Production, dude. You have got multi-cameras right now streaming this live. That is not an inexpensive thing to do. But when you put the production devices in the hands of the creators, who are the young adults today, so we've gone away from the days of consumers consuming content, where we now have a creator, a critic, and a curator of an experience, dude. They're in control, and they have the controllers. So they're producing content, potentially at a lower cost than we are, for a platform that could be incredibly valuable to them. And so part of it is rationalizing, well, why do you want to be part of that? Then we talk about the how and the what. And that's great, but until you talk about why, you may not even need to be there. And here's part of the challenge. A lot of people, you know, look at a corporate website, it acts like a 75-year-old man. You jump across their Snapchat account, acts like a 12-year-old boy. I'm like, what am I reconciling with here as this brand? What's the purpose, what's the DNA, and what's the value as to why I'd want to engage with it? That's what I care about.
So I'm sure you've had to talk executives off the cliff before, of we've got to be on Snapchat because that's where everybody is. Where do you start? How do you recommend for you as a coach to tell others, okay, this is why we don't need to be there right now, or why we do?
Well, there are 2 things, right? One is the shiny object in everyone's hands that we're all facing. We over-index in this country. Over 100% of the population stick around with phones, as you know. On average, people open their iPhone like 80 times a day. They interact with that. And by the way, there's a brand logo on there, so that gives you a presence that makes people feel good. But when you walk away to wearables that are screenless, that are sending information to these devices, that are tethering, which is too big for my pocket, so I'm putting it in my purse, dude, there's no logo there. You have to think about purpose differently. So part of it is, why do you want to be there? The first principle is, who's going to be there? And what is it that they're really looking to do? So if it's short form and you can tell an incredible brand story at 6 seconds, good, let's do it. But don't take a 30-second and cut it down to 6 and expect it to perform really well. You have to do something that feels like it's native and true to the content. And you know, the thing about vertical video today is it's personalized. It feels like there's a reason it's called portrait. It's portrait for a reason, dude. And when you turn it that way, it becomes less portrait. So go away from this device there and put it on a big screen. So part of it is, if you can engage with people that has purpose, then where do you think it's the best way to engage them? Then how should we put it there? And that's really and then how do we measure it? Because there are two things that come back, which was that was a really good idea, but it didn't perform. It didn't move soda off the shelf. Was that really the objective of that beautiful sentiment experience? Probably not. And if it is, you have to give it time, because there's that beautiful thing about building brands over time and sales overnight. Those two objectives should not come together because they have different outcomes. You should have one outcome, which is a business outcome about this, and another one should be the creative outcome, which could be that. Maybe one of the creative outcomes is to win an award, not move soda. Soda can do that over time later, once you drive your brand sentiment up. So I think there are new metrics that we should look at beyond the ones of which digital is being challenged upon today. Click-through rate, CPA, so cost per acquisition, you know, all of these sort of things, CPM. I mean, all of these metrics that people think about digital, they're gone. I think the metric we need to worry about is attention. And how you attend to somebody's attention is how good you are as a brand. Well, that was a diatribe, wasn't it, man?
So,
sorry.
talk to me
I don't even know if that was a question.
Talk to me a little bit about how you measure. So you think of attention. What you want to do now is measure that. How? Where do people
Beautifully.
start?
I mean, look, here's the beauty of it. So we acquired a company called Millennial Media. Millennial Media work with app developers, about 65,000 of them. So the thing I care about is, I know that you're facing that screen, but how do I really know that? Well, I may know it because you're playing video, and I can tell you're going to go all the way to the end, but you put your headphones in halfway through. So if you can start to interrogate the content that's on it and the physical device itself, then you can start to determine certain things. So the most important thing for my brand might not be subtitles. It might be that somebody had headphones in and volume up. You can understand that if you actually interrogate the device in which somebody's facing at the time, you know?
Interesting.
The other thing that's interesting about it, though, and let me just clarify this, is that people talk about digital, digital, digital. There is no digital. It's all the same thing. So the ephemeralness of where we are today is this. If I go and speak to young adults, they don't care whether an image is on that or an image is on a billboard. It's the context of the image. They don't care whether currency is 20 bucks I pull out of my pocket or Venmo on your device. It's all currency. So, you know, we have to sort of understand that it's all starting to blur together. And that's what those boundaries are about today, is that we're blurring the dynamics of it. So it doesn't matter, it's about context. Context is, I'm huge on context.
So people need, from what it sounds like from you, people need to stop thinking and worrying about this is online versus offline. They need to just say, this is experience.
Yeah, and what's the context of it? And what's the context of that experience? And also, that leads to moments, which needs to needs, which is throughout the day, I'm going to need different things. So if after this interview, I want to accomplish something else, I may go and finish off my shopping list, or I may check my bank account, or I may go and decide I want to go and play a game because I want to release. It's different. So I have different needs. And if a brand can meet me at that place where I'm experiencing that need, and they meet me at that's a great way for me to think about affinity in a different way today. Because we've moved away from awareness-based advertising homes, and we're moving to a place where we've got advocacy, word of mouth, peer-to-peer. Because as much as we're in an open environment we believe in, the world of social is closing itself down. Let me ask you a question. You on Instagram?
Yeah.
Is it private or public?
Private.
Okay. Private. So we're 50% of the audience.
Yep.
I'm public, you're private. If I do that to young adults, like school kids, 100% of the hands on Instagram, 100% of the hands say they're totally private. So we're going to a locked peer-to-peer closed network where brands have to interrogate those people through a different type of experience because it's no longer open. So awareness-based advertising, ain't gonna work the same way.
So talk to me, Chingy, a little bit about this idea of cross channel. You know, so many devices. You talked about having a primary device.
Sure.
And really the idea is whatever device they're looking at the moment is the most important. How do marketers and technologists, how do they deal with that? You know, I've got a cell phone, I've got a wearable, I've got a desktop, where do they start to connect all these up into just experience?
Yeah, we've covered it a little bit here and by talking about moments and needs. So the type of need I have with my wearable, my Apple Watch has run out of battery. By the way, that's why I'm not wearing the damn thing. So let's figure that thing out. Problem with a wearable is that, you know, to adopt a new habit, you have to be prepared to break one. So it's still trying to find a home with these other wearables today. But the phone is a different type of habit. Old people, young people, we've all been in our hands for the same amount of time. So we're all acting like adolescents on it. So that one is well defined. It's just that it's new. It's new for everyone today. So it's not a young person's game, it's everybody's game. But back to your question, it's about the moment. And it's about what is the need actually that I have for facing that primary screen, and what is the moment, typically emotional in my opinion, that you can actually support me on that. So if I'm watching something that's tugging at my heartstrings, what can you do to lift up my spirit? If I'm jubilated because I was able to win a game or an award, what can you do to reward me at that moment? The challenge today in an industry where it's about more is more, we're still judged upon popularity, and I don't think that's true. Because if the social open network is closing to closed peer-to-peer, you're going to have to interrogate that differently. And what I mean by that is, today we are judged upon popularity. But if we move away from that and say, well, I actually think niche is going to become the new mass. Because if I spend more time with a brand, and I have less brands that I care about, then that actually has to be a different value set. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have an emotional need that's being supported by them. Whatever that is, it could be fun, it could be happy, it could be sadness, it could be release, it could be accomplishment. You know, it could be all of these things which we ebb and flow throughout our day. But part of it is what is the need and what's the value of that? You know, and I think also part of the other challenge is then how do you do it in a way that feels very authentic? That's the most overused word in addition to experience. Both very valuable. But at the end of the day, what are you doing that feels like it's valuable to the platform on which you're trying to articulate your brand message? And it may not just be a message, it may be a conversation. Then that just, you know, flips us into things like AI. People are afraid of AI. I think AI is genius because all it is just another type of tool in the toolbox. If you think about it, and I think most people get it wrong. People think about machine learning, so they start with a kernel of an idea and they go like that. Brother, I think you got to flip it up the other way. You got to start with a super wide story. So what is all the context of which people are going to use this permutation of this beautiful augmented information, and how do we come down and give it straight into the real value of what they're trying to look for? And by the way, when do you hand it off to a human? So how do you make it feel like a brand human already and give it the beautiful value of what you're trying to get to? So anyhow, what was your question?
Last question for you, Shing. Talk to me about the need today for personalization. So we've got things like AR, VR, AI, all these things, all these channels and opportunities for marketers to reach people. How do they create personalized one-to-one experiences like AOL is talking to me?
Okay, let me say that I don't think personalization's broad enough. I think you're too linear. So I would argue that that's not where we are today. Personalization and customization in the real world already exists. I can go in and customize a pair of Nike IDs or Cole Haan, which you're wearing today. What's interesting about that is that's already customization of what you want. You're a maker. You know, we've gone away from consumers consuming content, the creator, the critic, and the curator, as I said. So I already want personalization, bro. I wanted to customize it, but I want it to feel like you're giving me the personalized experience. When I go and do a custom mini, there's hundreds of variations for me to feel like that car is completely personalized to my value. And then I got personalized maps. You know, we're already there, man. We've arrived. So where I think we're at is contextualization. What's the context of what you're doing here that makes me feel like it's hyper-personalized? Where is that headed next? In my mind, it's going to predictive. So if I feel like you need to have this experience and I'm going to deliver this to you, and it feels like you've made that decision, but it's brought to you by a brand that you give a shit about, that's pretty amazing, man. And I think that's where we're headed. So we're moving away from personalization and customization. We're going to absolutely think about where we're headed today from contextualization. Let's get that right. And then contextualization is goggles on, disconnected from humanity, augmented reality, doing this shit around reality, mixed reality, pushing it around by componentry, haptic technologies, to contextualization, which is deliver me the experiences that I'm expecting to be customized in the context of how I want them packaged. That's where we need to leapfrog this bad boy to, in my opinion.
Wow. Everybody, thanks so much for coming today. We're
Thanks,
so
brother.
excited we had Shing here with us. Thanks for your time, my friend.
Thanks, brother.
We'll be seeing you soon.
Cool.